The year was 1792, and the French population had completely shattered the status quo. For hundreds of years, the royalty and kings of Europe got all the resources. Everybody else got nothing except scraps and shot when they fought back. But here's the thing, governments rely on loyalty. No state in the world could hold out if everybody rose up, especially not if part of their military defected. The only thing stopping the peasants from overthrowing their kings was their belief that they couldn't. How could they fight back against God himself? But it only takes one country to overthrow their government before every country realizes that they are more than capable. And the most surefire way to start a revolution is to give the people nothing left to lose. When the options are death or revolt, the answer is obvious. The nations of Europe looked on in dismay as the Estates General, a revolutionary government, declared sovereignty, and King Louis XVI of France had no choice but to agree to more and more concessions or face the wrath of the angry mob, who had proven that they were more than willing and capable of killing the king and absolutely everybody around him. The king was forced to wear the revolutionary bonnet instead of a crown. The situation in France could not stand. The great powers, and indeed everybody else in Europe, had realised the sheer weakness of their position. The time to fight was now. They had to set the precedent that every revolution in Europe would be overthrown by the great powers, deterring the peasants from even daring to rise up against their kings. But they had to be practical for a second here. Few in Europe approved of the French Revolution, but few in Europe were ready for a war. France certainly wasn't, but they didn't let that stop them.
No, this is genius. If France goes to war against Prussia and Austria, and we lose, pro-monarchist forces enter Paris and restore the monarchy to its rightful place at the top. And if we win the war, well then a monarchy will become more powerful. It's genius, we can't lose.
You realise the revolutionaries think that too.
What?
They believe that if they lose the war, they can just blame it on you and use that as an excuse to overthrow you. This is insanity, okay? These people subscribe to the cult of the offensive and think we should attack the Austrians before the Austrians attack us. However, these people need to take 2 glances at the French economy to realise that we are just not ready for a war. We're the most unstable country in Europe. The armed forces are largely made up of untrained volunteers with the military experience of a gnat. And they don't trust their own officers, by the way. Speaking of, most of the officers, royalists by the way, have fled the revolution, and the new ones know absolutely nothing. If we go to war, then some French general's gonna overthrow our government. So with that, France declared war on Austria. Prussia came to the defence of her ally. France only shared one border with their enemies, namely the Austrian Netherlands, or modern day Belgium. And France knew that if they could conquer that land, the war would be won and victory would be theirs. And better yet, a couple years earlier, the Belgians had risen up and tried to overthrow the Austrians. Now, they had failed. However, France believed they could recreate this rebellion. General Dumouriez, leader of the French army, believed that the second 3 French armies crossed the border into the Austrian Netherlands, the Belgians would rise up and help drive out the Austrians. Within 15 days, the territory would be occupied by France. Despite all of his doubts, General Rochambeau still ordered a 3-pronged invasion. The Dunkirk column pushed all the way to Dunkirk, meeting absolutely no resistance, so it decided to withdraw. In the second column, General Theobald Dillon's men fled at the first sign of battle. He was able to just keep his troops from completely fleeing for a bit before they shot him and ran. The third column of the Northern Army also tried to rout, but the French general in charge just managed to keep them from routing all night long before he finally gave up and allowed them to flee. The northern prong had been an absolute disaster. So I was about to launch my attack in the centre before I was informed of just how well the attack in the north had gone, which was worse than I expected. So everybody just ran away, okay? It was an appalling performance. And I just remember thinking, I just remember being completely lost for it. So I called off my attack. Really, you called off your attack? Well, yeah, obviously. General Dillon was shot by his own men. And what did the Belgian rebels think of that? Oh, they were furious. They said I could have easily taken all the cities I'd been assigned because I outnumbered the Austrians. So, with the northern prong defeated and the central prong called off, the French invasion of Belgium had failed. And, do you know what else didn't succeed? The second invasion of Belgium that France attempted a few weeks later. However, the 2 failed invasions of Belgium were the least of the French worries, because the Brunswick Manifesto had just been posted by the Duke of Brunswick, declaring his intention to lead a combined Prussian-Austrian force into northern France and take Paris. He threatened that if anything further happened to the King of France, he would burn Paris to the ground. But he would spare the city if the King of France was left be. Either way, the king would be restored to power. It was just a case of how much damage was done to Paris. So editing Ben here, I just found the funniest thing ever, okay? Somebody do a cartoon depicting exactly how the French reacted to the Brunswick Manifesto. With that, a combined Austrian-Prussian force stormed across the border and laid siege to the French fortress of Longwy, the first step on the way to Paris. Meanwhile in Paris, the French citizens were reviewing the Brunswick Manifesto. They had just effectively read a letter that said, lay a finger on the king and you die. So how do you think they reacted to this letter? Have you ever heard the phrase, burn the boats? The French Revolutionary Guard, which was ballooning in size when they realised they might have to defend Paris from an attack, stormed the king's Tuileries Palace, defended by 1,200 Swiss guards. It was a slaughter. 50% of the guards would die. 200 more would be captured. Some of the Swiss guards, especially the ones that weren't at the palace at the time, would escape and join the counter-revolutionary forces who would lead a rebellion in Vendée. Almost all of these guards, even the ones that died, would receive a Medal of Honor and Loyalty from the Swiss government itself. As for the king, he escaped before the battle began to the government building. The French government waited until victory at the Tuileries Palace was certain before holding a vote to suspend the monarchy entirely. The Tuileries fell, the king was put under house arrest. Longwy would fall to the Prussians, Verdun would be surrounded. The commander of the Verdun fortress shot himself as his defences collapsed. Now, there was nothing standing between the Prussians and Paris. So with that, all hope was lost. The Prussians would storm Paris, take the city, and then all the clergy and the nobility which had been put in prison by the French Revolution would simply be let out of prison and exact their revenge on the people of France for this revolution. Not if we kill them all. The clergy and nobility can't be let out of prison to exact their revenge on the people of Paris if they're all dead. So angry mobs broke into the prisons of France and inflicted the brutal September massacres. Thousands were killed. The situation was made so much worse when Piedmont Sardinia decided to declare war and invaded France from the south. Meanwhile, the French army had recently been plotting a third invasion of Belgica, but when they heard that Paris was about to fall, they raced to block the road to the city. Eventually it ended up so the French armies were right behind the Prussians. The Prussians cut off, called off their attack on France to fight their way out and destroy the French field armies. They met the French at the mighty Battle of Valmy. 70,000 troops would fight at Valmy, and while only 500 would die, this battle would change the course of history forever. The French artillery, set up on the high ground, would open fire on the Prussians in the infamous cannonade of Valmy. The Prussians would use their own artillery to shoot back. So, remember the invasion of the Austrian Netherlands when the French literally ran away at the first sight of battle? Yeah, let's hope they do that again. Order an infantry assault on the French guns. Oh look sir, it's the Prussians. Alright, all guns fire at the Prussian infantry. Sir, they caught us completely off guard and took us by surprise. We had no choice but to retreat. What did they do? They didn't run in terror at first sight. Wow, what a cunning military maneuver. You had no way of knowing that they would do that. The artillery duel continued, and Brunswick ordered a second attack. This time, the infantry would charge and have a stroke of luck. How much damage is there? It looks like they shot the ammunition wagon. Alright, tell everyone to keep calm, keep firing at the Prussian infantry, and make sure every gun has enough powder. The second infantry assault failed. Prussia called off the attack as France continued their artillery barrage. The Prussian infantry fell back. This was the first Prussian defeat of the war and boosted French morale massively. This slowed the Prussian advance. Now victory would require much more time and money. Brunswick decided to retreat. France had been saved. The city of Lille, under siege by the Austrians, was relieved. France had a third crack of invading the Austrian Netherlands. This time, they succeeded. Meanwhile, they sent an army to take city-states up the Rhine. They took so many city-states they even conquered Frankfurt. Piedmont ended up at war with France, but the French army was sent to take the city of Nice and the county of Savoy, which they continued to do and succeeded. With that, it seemed that the French had won. They had a great natural defence along the Alps to block any possible invasion. They had also taken the Austrian Netherlands. How could they lose? It's not like they were about to do something that could turn all of Europe against them and end them up at war with the entire continent. And that 360 votes in favour of not killing the king, and 361 votes in favour of killing him. France had just executed the representative from God. This could not stand. This could not become the norm in Europe. France launched an invasion of the Netherlands before declaring war on Britain and Spain. Portugal, Naples, the Holy Roman Empire, the Pope, all declared war on France. This war had gone continental. The Allies began an invasion and pushed the French out of Belgium. At the same time, counter-revolutionaries in Caen, Lyon, Marseille, and the Vendée rose up against the French. The city of Toulon, where the entire French Mediterranean fleet was located, allowed the British Navy to come in and occupy the city, taking the entire French Mediterranean fleet without a shot being fired. France had gone from the winners to the almost certain losers. How could they defeat a coalition so powerful? Well, would you believe it? We actually did have a plan to win this war.
Go on.